My grandmother called me at 11:38 p.m. during the worst rainstorm Phoenix had seen all year. She didn't say hello. She didn't cry. She just whispered 3 words into the phone. "Come get me." Then the line went dead. I found her 40 minutes later, sitting outside my uncle's house on the curb, wrapped in a thin cardigan, holding a grocery bag with 2 sweaters, her medication bottles, and the little silver music box my grandfather had given her before he died. Rain ran down her face like tears, but she wasn't crying. That was the part I will never forget. She looked too tired to cry. 6 months earlier, she had sold the family bakery for $940,000 and handed every dollar to my Uncle Victor. All she asked in return was one sentence: "Make sure I'm never alone." He promised. He even held her hand when he said it. And then, after the money cleared, he slowly moved her into the guest room, took her car keys, controlled her phone calls, and convinced the entire family she was getting difficult. By the time I pulled up that night, he had already changed the locks. My grandmother, Dolores Rivera, was 79 years old, 5 feet tall, and tougher than every man in our family combined. She had built Rivera's Bakery in Tucson with my grandfather after they immigrated from Mexico with nothing but a suitcase, a rolling pin, and a stubborn belief that sugar could keep people alive when life got bitter. For 48 years, that bakery smelled like cinnamon, coffee, warm bread, and my childhood. I used to sit behind the counter after school, doing homework between stacks of pink cake boxes, while my grandmother corrected my math with flour on her hands. She taught me how to count change before I learned fractions. She taught me how to frost a cake rose before I knew how to tie my shoes properly. And she taught me something else. People reveal themselves around money, not when they lose it, when they think they have already won it. My Uncle Victor had always been the polished one. Expensive watch, perfect hair, real estate license, a voice that sounded like it belonged on billboards. He called himself an investor, though most of his investing involved convincing other people to trust him with money. My mother, Elena, worshipped him. "He knows business," she used to say whenever he walked into a room. My Aunt Carmen said he was the man of the family after my grandfather died. And me? I was just Sophia, the quiet granddaughter, the one who worked in food delivery logistics, according to my family. That was their phrase, food delivery logistics. They used it when they didn't want to admit they thought I drove around with catering trays for a living. Technically, I did deliver food once. At 22, I started transporting leftover bakery goods to shelters in my old Honda Civic. At 24, I built an app to connect restaurants with food banks before closing time. At 27, that app became Sol Mesa Supply, a regional food distribution platform serving hospitals, schools, shelters, and independent restaurants across Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. At 32, my company was worth more than Victor's entire real estate portfolio had ever pretended to be. My family didn't know that, mostly because they never asked. They only saw me carrying insulated food bags and assumed I had stayed small. That night, when I helped my grandmother into my car, her hands were ice cold. I wrapped my jacket around her and turned the heat up as high as it would go. She stared straight ahead. Not at the house, not at me. Straight ahead. "Did he hurt you?" I asked. She shook her head once. "Not with hands." That sentence sat between us all the way back to my apartment. My place was not built for two people. It was a one-bedroom above an old print shop in downtown Phoenix, with uneven floors, loud pipes, and a refrigerator that hummed like it was fighting for its life. I gave her my bed and took the couch. She didn't argue. That scared me more than if she had. The next morning, my mother called before sunrise. Her voice was sharp, already rehearsed. "Sophia, what did you do?" I was making oatmeal in the kitchen while my grandmother slept. "I picked up Abuela after Victor left her outside in a storm." A pause. Then my mother sighed. "Sophia, don't exaggerate. Victor said she became aggressive." I looked toward the bedroom door. "She's 79. She threw a cup. After he changed the locks?" Another pause. Then my mother lowered her voice. "You don't understand how difficult she's been." There it was, the family script. Difficult, confused, emotional, ungrateful. Words people use when they want to make abandonment sound like self-defense. I asked one question. "Where is the bakery money?" My mother went silent. "Good." "What does that have to do with anything?" she finally asked. "Everything." "Sophia, your uncle is managing it." "No, he was supposed to care for her." "He has been caring for her." I laughed once. It came out colder than I intended. "She was on the curb with a grocery bag." My mother snapped then. "You always think you're better than this family." "No," I said. "I just think leaving old women in storms is wrong." I hung up before she could answer. For 2 weeks, nobody came to see my grandmother. Not Victor, not my mother, not Carmen, not one cousin. But they called each other constantly. I know because screenshots started coming in from my younger cousin Marisol, the only one in the family who still had a conscience. Victor was telling everyone I had kidnapped Abuela for money. My mother said I was unstable. Aunt Carmen said I had always been jealous because Victor was successful. The family believed them. Of course they did. People prefer the version of the story that lets them stay comfortable. Meanwhile, my grandmother and I built a routine. Morning medication, coffee in her blue mug, short walks downstairs when her knees allowed it. Afternoons, watching old telenovelas she pretended not to enjoy. At night, she sat at my tiny kitchen table while I worked on Sol Mesa contracts. She never asked how much money I made. She asked better questions. "Do your drivers get health insurance?" "Yes." "Do the restaurants pay on time?" "Mostly." "What happens to the food if a shelter cancels?" "We reroute it." She nodded, like a queen reviewing a kingdom. One night, she watched me reject a contract from a large hotel chain because they wanted to underpay local kitchen partners. "You said no to a lot of money," she said. I did. "Good." I smiled. "You don't even know how much." She tapped her finger on the table. "I know enough. Money that makes you smaller is too expensive." That was my grandmother. She could cut through your soul with one sentence and then ask if you wanted toast. But she was getting weaker. Not dramatically, quietly. She slept longer, ate less. Sometimes she forgot which medication came first. And every time I paid for another doctor visit, another prescription, another mobility device, I thought about the $940,000 Victor had taken. I never asked him for a cent. Not because I didn't need it. Because I wanted to see how long a man could pretend a promise didn't exist. The answer was longer than I expected. Then came the call from Casa Paloma. Casa Paloma was the assisted living facility Victor claimed he had arranged for my grandmother. A woman named Denise from admissions called me, sounding confused. "Ms. Rivera, we received your grandmother's intake packet, but the deposit was never paid." I closed my laptop slowly. "What deposit?" "The 6-month care deposit. Your uncle said the family funds would cover it." "How much?" She told me. $38,000. My chest went still. "Did he ever schedule transport?" "No," Denise said. "We called several times. He stopped responding." So there had never been a plan. No room, no care, no transfer. Just a lie. My grandmother had been placed outside with bags because Victor wanted her gone before anyone asked where the money went. That afternoon, I called him. He answered with fake warmth. "Sophia, finally ready to stop being dramatic?" "Where is Abuela's money?" He laughed. "You don't understand financial management." "Explain it." "I don't owe you explanations." "No," I said. "You owe her care." His voice hardened. "Your grandmother gave me that money freely. To take care of her. I did. She was outside in the rain. She made choices." That sentence did something to me. Not anger, not even shock. Something cleaner. Decision. I said, "You have 48 hours to transfer her care funds into a protected account." He laughed again. "You always were funny." "I'm not joking. You think because you run errands for restaurants you can threaten me?" I looked at the Sol Mesa acquisition packet open on my desk. A national hospital network was preparing to sign with us. The deal would make us the largest independent food logistics platform in the Southwest. I said quietly, "Victor, you have no idea what I run." He hung up. 3 days later, my grandmother asked me to take her to the old bakery. It had been closed since the sale. The new owners planned to renovate it into a wine bar, which felt like a crime against God and good bread. I drove her there at sunset. She brought the silver music box. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe childhood makes everything taller. She stood in front of the locked door for a long time, one hand on her cane, the other holding the music box. Then she said, "Your grandfather hid things better than I did." I turned to her. "What does that mean?" She smiled. "Some recipes are not recipes." I almost laughed. "Abuela." She opened the music box. Inside was the tiny dancing figure I remembered from childhood. But beneath the velvet lining was a small brass key. My breath caught. "What is that?" She placed it in my palm. "The freezer room." The old bakery had a walk-in freezer in the back. I remembered being terrified of it as a child. Heavy door, metal handle, cold air. My grandmother used to say, "Never go in unless someone knows you're there." I called the realtor managing the building sale and asked for access. He hesitated until I gave him my full name. Not Sofia Rivera. Sofia Rivera, founder of Sol Mesa Supply. His tone changed quickly. Funny how that works. Inside, the bakery smelled like dust and memory. My grandmother stayed near the front counter while I went to the back. The freezer had been emptied, shelves removed, floor scrubbed. But behind one loose metal panel near the compressor line was an old locked box wrapped in plastic. The brass key opened it. Inside were papers. Not cash, not jewelry, papers. Old partnership agreements, property records, original bakery purchase documents, and a sealed letter addressed to me. My grandmother stood beside me by then, breathing carefully. "He wanted you to have that after I was gone," she said. "Who?" "Your grandfather." My hands shook as I opened the letter. Mija, Sofia. If you are reading this, then someone in this family has confused money with love. I hope I am wrong. But if I am not, listen carefully. Rivera's bakery was sold, but not everything was sold with it. Years ago, I bought the building next door and the parking lot behind both properties through a separate company. Victor knows about the bakery. He does not know about the land. The land was never for your mother, your aunt, or your uncle. It was for the one who understood what this place really meant. It was for you. I stopped reading. My grandmother touched my shoulder. There is more. The documents showed that the property behind the bakery had been quietly leased for years to a grocery distributor. The leases had been modest at first, then valuable, then extremely valuable. The account attached to them had been managed by a trust attorney my grandfather used before he died. The balance was not $940,000. It was $3.7 million. And the property itself, now surrounded by new development, was worth far more. My grandfather had left it all in a trust for the person who took care of Dolores Rivera without asking what was in it for them. My name was written on the final page. I sat down on an upside-down milk crate and cried in the dark freezer room. Not because I was rich, because for the first time in years, I felt seen by someone who was already gone. My grandmother stood over me, one hand on her cane. "I wanted to tell you sooner," she said. "Why didn't you?" "Because your grandfather wanted proof." "Proof of what?" She looked toward the front of the bakery. Who showed up when the bread was gone? The trust attorney's name was Matthew Sloan. He had an office in Scottsdale with leather chairs, glass walls, and the calm expression of a man who had watched families destroy themselves over money for 30 years. 2 weeks later, we sat around his conference table. Me, my grandmother, Victor, my mother, Aunt Carmen, 3 cousins. Everyone came because Victor told them I had stolen something. Everyone left, knowing he had. Matthew opened with the bakery sale. "Yes," he said. "Dolores Rivera legally transferred the sale proceeds to Victor Rivera." Victor leaned back, smug. My mother looked relieved. Then Matthew continued. However, the transfer was documented in accompanying estate notes as a care advancement, not inheritance. Victor's smile faded. Matthew placed a folder on the table. Mr. Rivera agreed verbally to provide housing, medical support, transportation, and daily care. Unfortunately, several records indicate he did not fulfill those duties. Victor snapped. There was no written contract. No, Matthew said. There was surveillance footage. The room went silent. My grandmother had installed cameras at Victor's house after he started taking her phone. Not because she was paranoid, because she had run a bakery for 48 years and knew exactly when someone was stealing from the register. The footage showed everything. Victor taking her wallet, Victor refusing her medication, Victor carrying her bags outside, Victor closing the door while she sat in the rain. My mother covered her mouth. Aunt Carmen whispered, "Victor." Victor stood. "This is illegal." Matthew looked bored. "It is not. Arizona is a one-party consent state in many circumstances, and the home security system was installed with Dolores's authorization in her residence area. You may challenge admissibility if you enjoy losing slowly." I almost smiled. Then Matthew opened the second folder. The late Miguel Rivera also created a separate trust containing real property and accumulated lease income. Dolores Rivera confirmed the final beneficiary condition. Victor's voice cracked. "What trust?" Matthew looked at me. "The trust passes to Sofia Rivera." The room changed. Not loudly, deeply. Like a floor collapsing under expensive shoes. My mother turned to me. "You knew?" "No." Victor pointed at my grandmother. "She's confused. She doesn't know what she's signing." My grandmother sat straighter than I had seen her sit in months. "I knew enough not to leave it to you." That was the first time anyone in that room looked truly afraid. Matthew read the final letter aloud. My grandfather's words filled the room like warm bread and judgment. "To my children, the bakery money was a test, not a business, of character. To Victor, you took the money and forgot the woman who made it possible. To Elena and Carmen, you believed the loudest voice because it was easier than asking the quiet person what happened. To Sophia, you came in the storm. That is all I needed to know." When Matthew finished, nobody spoke. Then my mother started crying. Not when she saw the footage, not when she heard about the rain. When she realized nothing was coming to her. That told me everything. Victor tried to contest the trust. He failed. The footage destroyed his reputation before the legal arguments even began. The family stopped inviting him places. His real estate clients disappeared. His wife moved out after learning how much of the bakery money had gone to gambling debts and failed investments. My mother called me 3 weeks later. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said. I asked, "Did you ask?" She went quiet. That was answer enough. Aunt Carmen apologized first. A real apology. Messy, embarrassed, specific. "I believed him because it meant I didn't have to help," she said. That one mattered. Because it was true. My grandmother lived with me for another year. A good year. Not easy. Good. She watched Sol Mesa expand into California. She complained that my office coffee tasted like burnt dirt. She taught my employees how to make proper conchas during Hispanic Heritage Month and told my CFO he kneaded dough like a nervous accountant. When she died in my apartment, in my bed, holding the silver music box. Not alone. Never alone. At her funeral, Victor sat in the back. My mother cried quietly. Aunt Carmen held my hand. And me? I placed the music box beside my grandmother's photograph and said the only thing that mattered. She was not difficult. She was not a burden. She was Dolores Rivera, and she deserved better than anyone gave her, except the man who knew exactly how to make sure the truth survived him. 6 months later, I bought back the bakery building. Not to reopen it exactly. You can't resurrect the past just because you have money, but you can honor it. Rivera's became a community kitchen and food training center for seniors, immigrants, and single parents trying to build small food businesses. The parking lot became a weekend market. The building next door became Sol Mesa's nonprofit headquarters. On the wall near the entrance, I hung my grandfather's letter. Under it, in brass letters, I placed one sentence. The bread is gone. The promise remains. People ask if I got revenge. I guess I did. But not by destroying Victor. He did that himself. My revenge was simpler. I kept the promise he broke. I used the money for the people my family had ignored. I built something from the place they thought was already emptied. And every morning, when the kitchen fills with cinnamon and coffee again, I think about my grandmother sitting in my passenger seat that rainy night, wet cardigan clinging to her shoulders, music box in her lap, still too proud to cry. She had lost a house. She had lost a son. She had lost the illusion that family always means safety. But she had not lost everything. Because someone came. Sometimes that is all love is. Not speeches, not inheritance, not blood. Just someone answering the phone and driving through the storm before it is too late.